Hi everyone, I'm Lori Ann. I'm from Milton, Ontario. I am that gal, and I am here with.
My name is Roy Miller. I am that guy. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and we're going to tell you how we see it.
So today we're really pleased to have Thomas Fraser with us. He has a very interesting background, a lot of great adventures. He's also, with everything he's gone through, he's also a poet, a writer, and there's a lot more things that we find out every time that we speak to him that he's done that's new and exciting. So thank you for being with us, Thomas.
Yes, thank you.
Glad to be here and excited to see how this podcast stuff goes.
Well, you're an entrepreneur now and have been for a while. So when you were growing up, was that something that you thought you would be an entrepreneur? Did you have that desire, or how did that come about in your life?
Oh man, I was an entrepreneur since 11 years old.
Okay.
That's all I've ever been. I think it was 11. 11, I started realizing that people were throwing away. Right now, it seems a little bit different, but everybody's worried about the environment and whatnot. But where I grew up, Greenwood, BC, the people will be throwing beer bottles out and pop cans out everywhere. And I learned quickly you get 5 cents for one of those. So I got to be really good friends with a man from Anaconda, BC, Johnny Pop Bottle, his name was. And I'd collect pop cans and pop bottles all week long, and I'd hit them up on Friday, and I was banking. So yeah, I've always been an entrepreneur. Yeah.
How was
So
it like?
how did you progress from there as you grew older? How did you progress in your journey?
Pretty much anything that I could see that was coming around the corner. I mean, if there was something that other people didn't want to do, I'd do that. I mean, the biggest thing is people always think that there's no opportunity. There's not enough opportunity. There's no work. There's nothing. It's just because you're not willing to do it. That's the way I see it, anyhow. I mean, I grew up in population, I think 300. It was a city. It's the smallest city in BC. But I mean, there was always opportunity. There was something. I mean, people would think, wow, stacking firewood, that's terrible. But I mean, if you're in a city full of people and need firewood, that's a pretty good job. Paid better in the mill. If there's folks out there coming through and they're rich and they don't want to go and pick their own flowers, they go pick bouquets of flowers, sell that stuff. It's a pretty good job. Save up for the winter. There's I don't know. There's always something. So as I was growing up, I was just always looking for the next thing. And it wasn't that I was tossing out one, go to the other. I just keep stacking them. I didn't have any ego about it. Like, I was still taking pop bottles in until I was like 17, heading off to grade 12 in another city. Whatever it takes, right?
Yeah.
How is it balancing? I mean, I know a lot of people are entrepreneurs. Sometimes they get frustrated with the actual educational system. How did you deal with that? Did you enjoy school, or was it frustrating for you because of your mentality?
Heck no, I hated school. The only thing that saved me in school was I was in a split grade 4-5 class, and this fella, he was a South African. We still got reception.
You're still here. Yep.
This actually, no, he wasn't South African. He was a Kiwi. So Mr. Austin, he was my teacher for grade 4-5, and he realized early that they were close to almost putting me into what we would call back then learning disabled. And he couldn't understand that anything that I was actually interested in, I was getting close to 100%. I was acing on everything. But if I didn't like it, and if it wasn't interesting to me, I just wouldn't do it. And normally you'd think that be a bad thing for him to encourage that, but I don't know. He identified it. So I ended up getting PE twice a day. And for, I think, 8 months, he had me studying something I liked a lot. I was studying the Coagul people and the Haida people from the West Coast. And people were like, well, how could you put that much time into something like that? But I was blessed enough to pick, a group of people that had a very diverse culture, huge art. And from there, I was able to started looking, you know, correlations between them and other peoples. And back at the time, and this is kind of funny actually, back at the time when everybody thought that all the folks coming across the First Nations were coming across the ice shelf, that was the old way of thinking, right? Everybody was like, we came over from Mongolia, and during, you know, the ice pack came across, and we came down, we came through. And I always thought about it. I was looking at the people. I'm Okanagan Salish myself, Salish, and I look at my people, and I look at the island people. They look so different. And then I look at the people from like Eastern Canada, totally completely different. And even along the West Coast, there's very different people. Like the structure of their face was different. The way that they moved was so different. And I really believed, I'm like, that can't be just cultural. There's no way. So what did I do at grade 4 or 5? Because I had all this time with this gentleman, he let me go into depth of it. So what do? You follow the songs, you follow the art, and you follow the deities or the gods. And I was able to put it together that the West Coast people, like the Haidas and most of the Quagles, they were come from Polynesian descent. If you look, their people were connected to Easter Island, the Hawaiians, and Polynesia. And even the New Zealand people. And if you look at the facial structure, it's all there. You go and go to YouTube right now, and you start looking at the things that they've carved, the gods that they respected and paid homage to, and even follow the songs. It's the same people. And it made sense later. They're all ocean-faring people in giant long canoes, right? But nobody wanted to believe that. I looked at the Salish people here, and I'm like, man, why are their faces sharp? Or why are they, totally and completely different religion altogether? It didn't make sense. Well, the Okanagan is connected to a desert that goes all the way down to Mexico. So when the Spanish folk came, the people that managed to get out of the way, last of the Aztecs and some of the Mayans that, got brought up, they moved their way up here. Now, of course, you get a mingle of all the ice shelf people coming down, the Polynesian folks mixing with, with the Aztecs. Now we've got what is our little microcosm of First Nations people. But anyhow, what's interesting about it was the fact that at the time, my teacher was so excited about what I'd found. I mean, I filled walls and walls and walls full of study. And I was a kid that literally just wouldn't even do a single thing the year before. And he was so excited about that. He was submitting this stuff to the universities. And the universities are like laughing, and they're going, he's like, no, like, I think there's something to it. And only in the last couple of years, they've proven that to be true.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I think, and this is grade 4 or 5. So grade 4 or 5, I don't know when that was, but that was back in the 80s. I just think, when it comes to the school system, I think right now they've been missing the mark, because it was something that hasn't evolved over the last 75 years. Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy? Like everything else on the planet has evolved, but even history and English, all these things are taught, it hasn't been evolved. And everybody looks at the teachers. Why are kids not learning anything? It's not their fault. They're not the ones that are putting the curriculum together, right? This is something that we need to do. So
interesting, because here you are, you had something you're really interested in, and you did really well at. But there's so many children out there and students. I'm talking teenagers too, where I know my younger sister, incredibly bright-minded, very, very smart, but she just got bored of school, and that's what made her not like it. Was because she was just bored. They weren't. The things that you're interested in. Are you an entrepreneur? Is that how you feel? Well, then there's a different way of dealing with those children than the academic ones, right? So,
well, unfortunately, here in the U.S.,
absolutely,
our schools are trying to dumb us down. Our educational system in the U.S., it sucks. It really does. I mean, it sucks. We need to revamp our total education system.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the education system everywhere, and I mean it's by design. And I think right now we're finally seeing the culmination of it all. I think in the next 6 months, people are finally going to see better, close to an answer of the reasons why they've been asking. Why on earth would a system do this to people? Why would they calcify our brains? Why would they want our children to not be leaders and not be entrepreneurs? Why would they teach everybody to conform? And I think as the next couple of months roll out and some of the terrible things that are happening in North America right now in the world, I think we're going to start getting our answers. And I know there's a lot of people out there that have been waking up and seeing that. And it's funny because it's the first time that you're seeing so many different cultural and maybe a religious-based people on the same page. I've never ever seen, you know, my Christian friends have so much in common with you know, with the truthers or the conspiracy people, because all of a sudden they realize they're like, man, we're in Revelations right now. You know what I mean? Like if I spent a better part of 3 times 6, oh wow, I don't know, 3,000, a lot of days in a place where the only book I had for most of the time was the Bible. So I was well versed, and when I started seeing some of this stuff roll out in the last little bit, I realized, I mean, that's where we're in interesting times right now, and I hope people start making the right choices. That's for sure. One, the schooling is going to be one of the most. Sorry, Liz. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I was just going to say, so segue to that, in regards to your education. So I know that you actually ended up going to university and finishing off later on. Did you actually leave the schooling system for a little while by any chance?
Yeah. I think grade 9. So grade 9, you know what I mean? And this will be one of those ones that sounds like a heck of a story, but it really was. Maybe kind of wonder about the timing. But when I was in between grade 8 and grade 9, I decided to go on an endeavor and sell marijuana. And I was pretty good at it too. And I don't know, I just figured it'd be nice. There were certain things I wanted to have, and we were in a position where we were in a bit of a have-not thing. And there were certainly a lot of customers at the time, and I didn't smoke it, so it was a great way to save my money. And one day my mom found out, and she just asked me, she's like, look, like we're not the type of people that are going to get away with this. This is not good. She was like, my mom didn't smoke, she smoked cigarettes, but didn't smoke weed, didn't drink at all, like nothing. And you know, they'd spent a lot of time putting me in sports, even though we didn't have much. They put everything that they had into creating an active sports lifestyle for me, I guess. And when she asked me, I was like, if it was anybody else, I would have told them to go themselves, but it was my mom. So I packed everything up, and I'm talking about everything, like just everything. And I had it in this coat, and I went to school. And as I stepped off the bus, the Midway RCMP guy was standing there. Of course, was also my defense partner. I lived in a very small city, so when I played pickup games and stuff like that, he was also my defense partner on the ice. So that was really awkward. He was like, you probably know why I'm here. I'm like, no, man. He was just like, come on. I'm like, yeah. So anyhow, that resulted in me missing the last 4 months of school. And so I got really behind. Grade 10 was a mess. I already didn't like school. Grade 10, besides being behind school, I was further discovering girls. I luckily still wasn't, you know, doing drugs or drinking or anything like that. But I mean, I was definitely drunk on girls. And yeah, so I don't know. I got really distracted. And grade 11, same thing, a mess. And at the end of grade 11, I'd always had a problem getting to play for a hockey team. In Greenwood, the population was too small, so my parents would have to drive me to Grand Forks, which is about 45 minutes away, to play hockey. And you know, this is 4 nights a week, and for people that were barely just getting by, I don't know how they did it, but they did. And they were able to do that for probably 6 years. And then grade 11, there was no team in Grand Forks, so they decided they were going to put me in Oswego Oliver. So you imagine driving 2.5 hours in the snow 3 days a week. My mom was doing this, and I'm talking about like she couldn't afford to like anything, but she'd do it. And they wanted to keep me going. Then for grade 12, that was no longer an opportunity either. So I went on the milk run. I went to Dawson Creek. I went all over Alberta. I went looking for a home to play for juniors, and I ended up in Merritt, BC. And I mean, in hindsight, it probably wasn't a good idea. I was very immature in that way. I'd lived close with my mom. I was definitely a mama's boy. I might have grown up in a way that was quite rough, and I did things in aggressive fashion that most people would be horrified of. But at the end of the day, it always went back home to a loving mom, and that cooked really well, and took care of your laundry and made sure you were okay. And so when I moved out in grade 12, I wasn't quite ready for that. I lived about half an hour away from school, and I was living on my own. And of course, my mom had to take pick up 3 more jobs to try and help me pay rent and stay in hockey and eat, which at that time I finally discovered beer, so we didn't really eat anymore. We saved that for beer and Girls on Friday. So literally starvation, like literally I lost up like 62 pounds. I was shredded. Yeah, I was shredded. But if in hindsight now, doing personal training, understanding nutrition, I was behind in school already, and then I was trying to go to a higher level of a curriculum, which Merit was compared to Greenwood Midway, and compete in at a different bell curve with absolutely no nutrition in me whatsoever, and the stress of trying to keep up with hockey, living on your own, and at least trying to have proper hygiene, and chasing gals. So in the end, yeah, I didn't graduate. Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
But you went forward to graduate at that,
yeah, in the prison system. I was
tell
blessed.
us about that, what you did there. I know there's probably a whole story on how you got there, but one thing, while you were in there, I'm pretty impressed with what you actually managed to do.
What's the best way to attack that one? All right. Well, actually, I guess this makes it really easy. So just before I went in, I had watched a movie called Apocalypto. And Mel Gibson had produced this movie, and it was a wonderful movie. I mean, it was gruesome, it was brutal, but it was just a well-produced movie. Cinematography was great. I've always been interested in ancient civilizations. You couldn't think of something cooler than the Mayans and the Aztecs. You look at the regalia, the stuff, the pyramids, these are things I've studied and been absolutely enthralled with my whole life. And then I love the jungle. So I love this movie. And I had about a year into my first bit, I had realized that there was a lady teaching. So if you actually wanted to see a girl, if you'd go to the classroom, you might see one, and sometimes they have free coffee. So I went pretty much in order for that, and then there was, well, you got to do some schoolwork when you're here. And so I'm starting back over at grade 10, and she gets me writing, and I was like, you know what? I kept on thinking about this movie. And I just wandered around. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I got some time. I've got nothing else to do. I'm going to write. So I started writing the first pages of a novel I'm writing called Songs of the Rainforest. And it was kind of mirrored. I always thought, I thought about Apocalypto, and I thought how crazy it was. Like how many people were like, oh my God, these pyramids and their masks and their regalia. And so many people from Canada and North America don't even know how diverse, like how in depth, how absolutely completely articulately amazing the art is, and the regalia is, and even the housing, from totem poles to the full dancewear of all First Nations in Canada, but in my mind, especially West Coast. I thought, God, what a movie that would make someday. So I started writing. I was writing my little heart out. Like I was literally skipping gym. I had went down for my TVP and whatever crap they were serving that day, but I ain't never skipped a meal. But I mean, I was really, really dedicated, and I sent a copy out, got it done, sent a copy to the teacher, sent it out to a bunch of my friends, and she kind of sat there, nodded silently, and my friends, of course, didn't want to get bashed, so most of them were like, it was all right. Finally, I had one good friend, he was a brave guy, and he was a really good fella, and he was like, fuck, you suck, man. I'm like, what? He's like, I don't even know what you're saying. I'm like, what do you mean? He's just like I don't like your vocabulary. It's bad. Your grammar. Like, do you know what grammar is? I'm just like, not really, man. And he's just like, you can't read something if you don't understand grammar. Like, there's nothing. He's like, I'm sure you got a story here, but you can't convey the shit. So I don't know. I was horrified. And then I just decided that, I wanted this. I wanted this so bad. So I started doing school, and she's like, look, she was very smart. She's seen the teacher there, seen how bad I wanted that. And she said, look, I need you to pass all these classes in order to keep going. You can't just do grade 10, 11, and 12 English, right? Creative writing, literature, no. So I finished grade 10, 11, and 12 in like 3 months, and managed to get 100% on everything. It was crazy. Of course, at the time, right? It was really good. And from there, my bit was really odd. most people in history it's ever happened. Essentially, I got thrown into pretrial, and I had 2 cases coming along, and I essentially had no bail and no trial for 4.5 years. So it's illegal. You're supposed to have 18 months. You're supposed to throw out your child. So along the way, about 2.5 years, 3 years in, we decided to just concede to one of the charges, which gave me 5 years, but allowed me to go to federal. In the federal system, you got school, you've got programs, you've got outdoors, you've got like what you see on TV. What everybody's kind of big scared about on TV. I mean, that's a federal system. That's all right. The provincial system is built for men to be for months at a time. You know, you're in your 4x8 and you've got it like a little. You don't even see the light of day. Like, it's just gross. So I was blessed enough to get to federal, and I loved it there. School was great. Again, you know, female teacher, she was really nice. I found out about this creative writing course, and this fellow Ed Griffin. Ed Griffin was the head of writing. I mean, this guy, he marched. There's nothing he didn't do in America before. He was a Catholic priest, a Christian pastor, a Buddhist, something, and he was even an imam at one time. Like, he just decided that he was all faiths, right? All faiths for one. Just a really interesting guy. Anyhow, we had a really weird love-hate relationship for a long time, but he taught me to become a writer, and I got good, and I threw myself into it, and I was doing really, really, really well, and then I got parole. So I got parole, and I was heading out the door, and I thought I was on my way home, and I got gated and thrown back into provincial. So I spent another 3 years in the provincial system as a federal parolee. And it was horrifying, because to kind of go from the luxury and the freedom of being in a federal system, I mean, I'm not saying it's a great place, most people would die, but compared to being stuck in provincial, right? You know, and a lot of people are like, oh, I like provincial, it's safer. I ain't really afraid of anything. I'm not worried about that. I just like to be able to think, to be able to learn, you know, to be able to grow. And so I almost gave up for a little bit when they threw me back in provincial. I didn't know what to do. And then I just started teaching creative writing. Pardon me?
Were you anticipating them to do that, to get you back?
Hell no.
That's so
it's
weird.
never been done.
Sorry.
No, that's not done. Like, you can't be a federal. I was on federal parole, but a federal parolee, but they were keeping me in provincial. Like, it's just like, I mean, wrongful convictions to this day say that it's wrong and should have never happened, and we need to go back. And I'm trying to move on, right?
Yeah.
So I just decided I still wanted to do this, and I realized that it could benefit the men. So instead of heckling and going to the church and heckling the pastor, poor Pastor Bruce, again, like I said, I read the Bible through and through enough times to be able to kind of maybe use some of his verses against him, because I think I'd have more time to read it than he did, the poor guy. We ended up becoming really good friends, and I realized that, you know, he was trying to help the guys. He's one of the few people actually trying to help the inmates have a better life in the system. So we partnered up, and he started having church 3 days a week. He let me bring a group of guys down and start teaching them. Now, it was odd, because we had some guys that were educated, but 2/3 of the fellows in the system can't read or write. Most people don't know that, right? Wow. There's a lot of people in Canada right now that can't even read or write. You imagine how they're supposed to have a place in this world, right? How are you going to make it in life? No wonder why people are in the system. So I started teaching creative writing, and I was seeing like how much these men were opening up. Like, guys that just, you know, they're like badass guys were opening up to tell their story. And I was doing these workshops, and one of the things that happened while I was there, again, if you can imagine sitting there with no bail and no trial for 5 years in a provincial system made for people that get out, you know, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, a couple of weeks. I seen a lot of guys come and go. And at first, you know, I thought, oh God, I remember, you know, heckling them, and some of them becoming my friends, and then me getting mad at them. And then me coming to a point where I see it happen so long that I'm like, this can't be them. What the fuck is this? you know, excuse my language, but I mean, it's a what the fuck moment when this happens to human beings. How is it somebody that you bring back to life and you get them, you know, reading and writing and doing school for the first time? They're putting on 30 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds of muscle because they just came in like this little skinny zombie. And they're thinking, they're talking about the girl, and they're thinking about talking to see their family, and they leave on a Friday, and you're all excited when you're going to call them at this number. Monday morning, head held down, they roll back through the door. It's a little plastic bag, and they got the Reds on it.
Wow, that's crazy.
And I watched it happen over and over and over and over again. And what I realized is the provincial system does not have release programs or any sort of programs for an inmate that's not sentenced. And people would go, well, you know, that shouldn't really matter. Well, it does. So this is what you gotta imagine. It's 2 years or less, it's provincial, right? But the problem is because the court system is so backed up, people are staying in there. They're not getting a trial in the first week. You know, it's supposed to be within days or weeks at most, maybe a couple of months. People are sitting there. I mean, me, like 5, that was an anomaly, but guys sitting there for a year. And this is what happens. So they sit there, you know, playing cards and talking, you know, spinning a game and learning from each other, but nothing good. They go to court and one of two things happens. One, they get time served, so they head back out the door, or they're not guilty. They head back out the door. They haven't got drug and alcohol counseling. They haven't got any new schooling. They're put out in the street with no ID, no clothes, no personal contacts. They don't have a clue what a resume is or a cover letter. And they've lied about their address because at 10 o'clock at night, when you're heading out, right, when you first get let out, you have to have an address to give them. That's the only way they'll let you out the door. They don't check that shit, right? So these guys would give them an address, and by 10 o'clock at night, they've already breached again. The cops go and check on them to see if they're at that domicile, and they're not there. So now they breached. They're also, they've just increased their crime. Well, what happens if you breach? You're sure not getting a job. You're most likely on the run. You definitely aren't doing anything legal. You still want to chase some gals and maybe have a good time. So you got to get money somehow. So your crime goes up. Your crime goes up. Then you decide maybe you found a gal that you like. So you don't want to go back. So what do? You hop in a car and now you're speeding down the road. High-speed car chase. Like, and I know it sounds like, wow, that's one for instance, but I watched it and this is how it went. Guys, it's a stepping ladder. It's a stepping ladder. It horrified me to see this. I thought, how on earth could they not have that?
Yeah,
So,
it's the catch-22. I've actually seen that too. I used to sit down and have lunch with homeless people, and the one guy says,
yeah.
I don't have a job, but I can't get one without an address, but I can't get somewhere to live without a job. And he was stuck there. He finally got himself out. I was pretty impressed, but it was just nuts listening to this. Like crazy. You know, and really nice guy. I mean,
No.
yeah, he did do some time, but he was coming out really trying, and it was really hard for him.
Yeah. And I mean, hard. I think it should be hard for us so we evolve, but impossible is the thing that bothers me. And what these men were looking at was impossible. And the only reason why they were still, I kept on seeing them in provincial is, again, it feeds the machine. I mean, how can you commit 20, 30, 40 crimes? Like some of these guys have done 15 bits, some of them 8 bits, 9 bits in the time that I was sitting there on bail. It feeds the machine, right? Until they're in a position where they graduate the charge about 2 years and then they go. But this is by design. I got to know enough blue shirts to understand this is by design. This is a money pit. So
while you were in there then, through what you were helping, did you actually help some of the ones that couldn't read and write to actually come out? Because that's a big thing too. If you can't read or write, a tough one. Was that one?
Yeah, no, I'm blessed. Yeah, I'm blessed. My mom got wrote by a lot of fellas. I kept in touch with a lot. But what I did was I created, at the time, my nickname, well, now it's Tommy Swoles, but my nickname was always Sugar. There's nobody in the prison system, none of the teachers, none of the guards, anybody like that. And I was 166, anyhow, I'm Sugar. That's me. So it was called Sugar's Release Program. And I was lucky enough to have time with the school. You know, the art teacher, she was a great gal. And and we were really close for a long time. So I get a little extra room in the school, and I was able to write stuff up and print it off. So I wrote up a release program. I looked at it. I was like, what are the simple things that I'm seeing that that the guys are lacking? So in order to join my program, and this is cool because it gets them out of the unit. Pastor is more than happy to give them coffee. Real coffee is a big thing. We only get chicory in there, right? So real coffee is a big thing. You get to hang out off the unit. I mean, especially if you're one of the guys that's having a really rough go. Guys get victimized quite a bit in there, and some of the guys are pretty happy to get off the unit a little bit. And I'm happy to see it for them because I don't like seeing somebody that's not some sort of creep pedophile or some terrible person, getting checked into protective custody. Some of these guys just need a chance to help themselves. And I don't think that's any way to live. I mean, God, Creator bless anybody in this world, but there's just some really scary, evil people out there. And I couldn't imagine being one of these young guys that gets victimized, now stuck in a cell and a unit with some of these, with some of these folks. So I always want to try and keep them on my unit as best I could. So in order to become a part of Sugar's release program, you had to commit, and you commit to finishing your grade 12. I know everybody's like, oh, what a big deal that is. That's a pretty big deal from the inside. It really is. So you had to finish your grade 12. You had to learn what it was to create a resume and a cover letter, and that was a big deal. Like, I'm talking 8/10 of the guys there never had a cover letter ever, nor a resume. You had to make positive contacts on the street, and if not, I would extend some to them, i.e. Bridges or some of the programs that are out there. So they had dialogue going back and forth on the phone before they were going. There was somebody on the other side of those walls that knew that they existed and that they were going to get out and they needed some assistance. They were going to get out there and make sure that they had clothes, they had shoes. I mean, think about it. You get, eaten up by a dog, or you go in there and you pack on a bunch of weight or something like that. Well, you don't have shoes. They'll throw you out in the street with a pair of plastic slippers. And you think these guys are going to, you're a young guy. What are you going to do? You're going to go in a store and rob it, right? Like, it's terrible to think of, but that's how easy it happens to some of these guys.
Well,
so they
really
had that. The cover letter, I mean, if they'd had any sort of drug and alcohol problem, we would go through our own programs because, again, there wasn't a program for them if they weren't sentenced, right? So we actually went and, maybe grabbed out of the files some of the DNA programs and the steps, right? And then guys that come in that have been doing the steps, and we put it through there and we work with them on it, right? And it was really crazy. Like, in the beginning, it started getting really, really good traction. Yeah, really good traction. And then the warden started finding out. They're like, hey, what's this church 4 days a week, right? They didn't like it. And all of a sudden they hear about Sugars. And they're like, as it was, I was getting shipped often for having too much control of the unit, too much control or influence within the jail. So they start putting me on the milk run. And I woke up at 5 a.m. and I'd be out in Prince George by, 2 that afternoon. Then I get woke up again. I'm sending out to Fraser, and then I just keep getting sent around on the milk run. And I mean, it was kind of odd at first because the whole idea is displacement, right? You're comfortable in a spot, you've got influence, you've got, your crew, your people around you, and they're going to send you on a new unit where you gotta, you know what I mean? You gotta do your thing if you want the back table. I ain't sitting anywhere but the back table ever. So, as much as that was an odd situation, what they didn't realize is I'm a bit of a chatty Cathy, and I don't give up quick. So I realized that there was other pastors out there, and there's other teachers out there, and maybe they'd want to participate in this stuff too. Of course, I had my friend support that too, so I might have been getting a call ahead of time. I don't know, I can't say that, but pretty sure they were getting a call ahead of time by a very good gentleman that I love forever. And we just kept on moving that program around, and eventually the blue shirts, which is the guards, kind of really caught on to it for the first time, asked if we could come sit in, which is usually a no-no because that's our time, right? Like, we got to stay the hell out and be on the other side of the wall. I asked the boys, I was just like, look, I really believe this is the only way that they're ever going to let this happen. Eventually, they're going to extinguish me, all right? Or I'm going to be gone. And this is not going to be here for you, or you're the next bit or the next bit, or your friend or your brother, right? So the boys said, yeah, for sure. And we had a couple of blue shirts sit in, and they were just embarrassed. They're like, how do we not have this? How do we as an institution don't have that? And they're going through and they're going through and they're going through. And they're looking at me. I'm like, I know, I'm 2 steps away from a caveman, but it wasn't anything that I was creating myself. I was just able to identify that there was good tools out there in the world and identify people that really needed them. And I just brought them together, right? So
Is it
eventually
still in the prison system to this day? They're still doing that?
yeah. So eventually the blue shirts decided that they were gonna bring this to the warden, and again the warden freaked out, sent me around for a little bit. I managed to make it back to KR. I had the teachers rally for me. I had a good amount of guards that didn't hate me. They rallied for it, and I think a lot of them petitioned for it. Eventually I got called up to the warden's office, and first time that we actually ever even sat down, I'm like, fuck, it's just awkward. Last thing you ever want to do is go walk in a room with the warden, right? Like it's not something that you do. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, no. And I'm like, look, keep the door open. And he's like, what? I'm like, you keep the door open. And he's like, look, it looks like this, program's I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it? He's like, yeah, it's not bad. I'm just like, so what'd you think? He's like, well, people seem to like it. I'm like, well, what'd you think? He's like, anyhow, pretty much what he came to is he's like, look, we'd like to institute this. If you really want it to stay, it just can't be called Sugar's release program anymore. I'm like, I don't give a shit what you call it, man. Like, just if let the boys have this thing. So anyhow, the craziest part about it was by the time that I had went for my sentencing at the end of when I finally actually got to see a judge, this judge and another one that was in the courtroom that day had already seen guys with my program in hand. Because you imagine, you're going in front of the judge for the first time and you haven't got programs. This is the whole idea of doing programs. So when people are looking for sentencing or they're looking for parole, they can say, hey, I took school, I took these programs, I've improved myself, right? The whole idea of jail is not incarceration, it's not punishment. I don't know, most people think that, but that's not what's there. It's to improve people, to evolve people, and allow them to fix the error in their ways. So anyhow, a huge number of young guys that actually had my program, right, which they still kept my name at the bottom, in their hands, and they'd use this and they'd show how they went through and how if they didn't pass this that they went back and showed the dates, right? Because I make them sign in every day what they got done, and if they didn't do it, how they went back and how they problem solved, right? Problem solving is a really big thing. Yeah. So anyhow, this judge had seen that and he's just like, that's you. I'm like, yeah. So we actually cited. I mean, if you Google my case, the judge in my sentencing actually went off about that because he couldn't believe that wasn't something that was in the system. So they did that there. And then when I got to federal, I was there for, I don't know, the first couple of months, and I had some parole officers reach out to me, and they're like, hey, this program, you got a copy? I'm like, of course, I'm proud of this thing. Of course I do. And they're like, can we have a copy of it? I'm like, you guys got the best programs, you know what I mean? Like the best that they have to offer in the Canadian system. Why would you need that? I didn't think about it. The guy's in the hole. So if you're in the hole, you might be sitting there right until the day that you're out, you're going up in front of in parole, but you've got nothing to show them. You didn't go to school, you didn't have a program, you didn't have any way, you weren't afforded the luxury of being able to better yourself in any way, which again, it's just crazy. They didn't have this set up, but since they're not allowed out of that cell, they're in the hole, they didn't get a program. So the parole officers are like, do you mind if we share this with our guys? Like, do you have that? I explain the curriculum and I explain the steps back and the steps forward and the tracking and the monitoring. Yeah. And they used it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know. It was happy.
That's a great story. You're absolutely right. If they're just in there. And Roy, you have a question?
No,
I know we're running a little bit up, like near the end of time, but
no, but I did want to say something, Thomas. You know, you were one thing that is I really caught on is your mother. What she did for you. I mean, man, you were so fortunate. Your mother is an awesome lady.
Yeah. When we got time to maybe in the next one or something like that, we'll go to the extent of it. But my mom was yeah. So I was very long time taking care of the family and doing things for us that went, and I just, like I said, when we were in sports, and I won't take up too much of you guys' time, but this is one of the things that I molded us as children and the way that we see the values of things we'd be in this old ricketed, window van. And I'm talking, my mom wouldn't buy new clothes for 3 years. And she'd be driving us. And whether it was baseball, swim team, hockey, or anything like that, she'd be the one driving us to practice 3 days a week, going to the far cities 2 days a week. And then we have these other kids that, their folks, Creator bless them, but lived in big houses that have brand new vehicles that are probably a lot safer on the road. They go on vacations, they were, the ladies that would kind of roll their eyes, you know what I mean? Because we didn't dress the same or anything like that. But their kids were in my mom's back seat because they couldn't afford or didn't have time to take them to the sports.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's my mom's a different kind of lady. She blessed that I am. She's still here today, and she doesn't change much. So, yeah, man. I don't have any hard luck stories there. We always think, you know what I mean. Somebody that got in the amount of trouble that I did, oh, they must have had a terrible upbringing or something like that. Nah, man. I came home to a house full of love on a daily basis. That was all me, man. I was very blessed that way.
You're very
Your
fortunate. Not everybody can say that.
No, they can't. Yeah, no, Grammy Shuttleworth is probably the reason why mom's so cool too. So, yeah, we'll get in that one too. I've got I got 4 amazing ladies in my life right now, and 3 of them are blood, and most likely one of them's gonna take my name one of these days. So, I'm a very blessed man. Yeah.
That's awesome. I really appreciate your time with us. It's absolutely wonderful to get to know you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time to yap at you a little bit. And I don't know. I look forward to talking to you guys again, and maybe I get to ask you some questions. It'll be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. So we're going to end this here for this session. And I am Lorianne from Milton, Ontario with.
I am Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas.
And again, Thomas, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.